Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix was released in 2007 and was directed by series newcomer David Yates, who would go on to direct the rest of the Harry Potter series, as well as the Fantastic Beasts movies. It's based off of the series of books by J.K. Rowling, and stars Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, and this time follows Harry Potter in his 5th year at Hogwarts as he is dealing with the reemergence of the Dark Lord Voldemort, and the rest of the world doesn't really believe him and sees him as kind of an outcast that is spreading lies throughout the wizarding world. And so because of this, the Ministry has brought in a new person to take on the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, and her job is to basically not teach defensive magic. So Harry and a group of rebellious students form an organization of their own to teach themselves to defend against the coming war. All while that is going on, there is the Order of the Phoenix, an organization that was created during the rise of Voldemort that is joined back together and is trying to stop Voldemort from obtaining a weapon that he did not have last time. Guys, Order of the Phoenix, I believe to be the most underrated of the Harry Potter films. The reviews for this were really good back then, but if you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, it is definitely on the lower end of the Harry Potter movies. However, I think this is probably one of the top tier Harry Potter movies in my opinion. In fact, this might even be my favorite of these films. I just love the style of this film, the mature themes that it deals with, and I think the acting is probably some of the best of this entire series, specifically with Daniel Radcliffe, which I think really shines in this film in particular, having to deal with a difficult role of people just not understanding him and really having to convey that to the audience. He is struggling, he is angry, and it's really good. I mean, Harry's been angry before, but to me, just not quite like this, and I think it's really showing in this story. Also, with this film, Steve Kloves, the writer of a majority of the Harry Potter movies, did not return for this one for whatever reason, and so we got a brand new writer to write this film, and they worked with director David Yates to create a story that stripped away a lot of the stuff from the book and focused only on Harry and his journey. And so I think with that, we get the most streamlined of the Harry Potter movies, and this is probably, in my opinion, the best adaptation of a book, because it is not a full-on representation of the book like some of the previous films have been, where they've tried to basically adapt as much of the book as they possibly can. This only does the essentials, and I think it is better for it. It made it, at the time, the shortest Harry Potter movie, under 2.5 hours, whereas all the others were around 2.5 hours or even beyond. And so we get this stripped down story that is very character focused, and I think that's what makes Harry and Daniel Radcliffe really shine in this film above all the rest. Also, the producers wanted to get David Yates in this film to direct it because they felt that he could really bring more of the political, darker side of the books to this story, and I think it really does work here. I love the look of this film. Despite it being very grim and dark looking, it has a very mechanical, a very stark feel to it. Like the world has just become empty and there's just nothing but darkness all around, and I thought it worked extremely well. I think David Yates was definitely a good pick for this film. However, I do think he overstays his welcome in the later films. But honestly, I want to talk about the real star of this movie, and that is Dolores Umbridge, played by, I think it's Imelda Staunton, who just plays this character so wonderfully. This is one of my favorite villains of all time. It is the perfect example of how to do over-the-top acting while also being extremely intimidating, and that is Dolores Umbridge down to a T. I think the acting for this character is absolutely fantastic. The acting is so good with this. This is a character that you love to hate, and she is so hateable. But you see her chewing every scene, and it's just fantastic to watch. I love the antagonist of this film, and I love seeing a lot of the students kind of trying to step up to her, even some of the teachers, and it's really, really satisfying near the very end when she finally gets what's coming to her. It's a great villain that I think really helps shape this movie into something completely unique for the Harry Potter franchise. I also like the more mature tone that it deals with, especially with some of the quieter scenes. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is with Sirius Black and Harry Potter. Sirius Black, obviously played once again by Gary Oldman, as they are talking about how Harry feels so alone all the time, and they had this conversation about how Sirius was an outcast with his own family. And I think it's a really touching scene and wonderfully acted, and it really made me care about what was going on in the film between these two characters, especially at the very end of the film when Sirius Black dies, and we get that amazing scene of Daniel Radcliffe just lifting all his emotions, laying it out on the table, and it's so wonderfully done that actually Daniel Radcliffe's scream was so horrifying that they actually made it silent when they actually edited the film together, because it was just so horrific and filled with sadness that they thought maybe they should just, keep it in, but, cut out the sound. And I think that's really awesome. And the third act of this film is stellar. This is one of my favorite third acts of the Harry Potter franchise. I think the battle at the Ministry of Magic in the Department of Mysteries is just so wonderful. It's got such good build-up. I love just how shadowy and dark it is and mysterious that room in particular is when all the Death Eaters start coming in to get this crystal ball, this prophecy. And the final fight between all of them, all the Death Eaters, all the wizards, it's a really messy kind of fight, which is something that David Yates really wanted to do. He wanted these wizard fights to be really messy and just not grand at all. If there's one complaint I would have about these scenes, it is that a lot of the colors are black and white, and I wish there was more like colorful magic going around. But then we get such great stuff like Dumbledore and Voldemort duking it out with a wizard duel, and it is as awesome as it sounds, and I absolutely love it. There's just so many great moments. I also think this film does a really good job of having montages. None of the Harry Potter movies have really had montages up to this point, and I think they do a really good job of just making it a lot of fun. It's really enjoyable to watch, and it's just, man, this movie is so fun. For as bleak as it is at times, it really has a lot of heart to it, some really great acting too, and some really fun characters that we get introduced to, such as Dolores Umbridge, or Luna Lovegood, who is played wonderfully, and she's wonderfully odd, and just a lot of these performances are just pinpoint perfect from a translation from book to screen, and it's just wonderful. Now, in terms of criticisms with this film, I'll go ahead and get some of the stuff that I don't really care about but can be seen as a criticism, and that is the CGI. This is definitely the weakest CGI of the series. especially seeing as the time that it came out in. Specifically, the character of Grop, which is Hagrid's brother, or half-brother. The CGI on this character is pretty terrible, because sometimes you just are like, is he really even there? Because sometimes CGI can be so good that you believe that it is actually there. However, with Grop, it feels like a step back. The CGI is really ugly, and it looks about as good as some of the CGI, some of the bad CGI that was in the first Harry Potter film, which is really odd to me. And I honestly think going forward that the David Yates Harry Potter films do not have the best quality of CGI over the films that were previously released. I also think that because they decided to streamline this Harry Potter film and turn the largest Harry Potter book into the shortest movie at the time, that they really kind of take out a lot of the character with some of our other favorites, such as Ron and Hermione, who don't really have arcs in this film, and they're definitely not the focus. It is definitely on Harry specifically. But other than that, that's really most of the problems that I have with the film. This is a really stellar film. I think it's very underrated. It's one of my favorite Harry Potter films. Again, I'll have to rewatch the entire series because this might actually be my favorite. I love the darkness that it brings. I love the laughter. I love the villain. I love the mysteries that it introduces, and I love how it deals with character specifically. And I like how it was able to strip down a book that I don't really see as one of my favorite Harry Potter books. Order of the Phoenix was definitely my least favorite book, and then they turned it into one of my favorite movies. So that is really awesome to me. So anyway, guys, with all that said, I'm going to give Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix an 8 out of 10. Well, guys, I want to thank you for watching this review. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review.